The whole internet is saying, if your phone battery is at 7%, you'll definitely scroll to a relaxing, sleep-aiding snow camping video. Isn't that just fooling kids? I think otherwise. The moment your phone battery hits 7%, you'll definitely scroll to me. Alright, no more talk. Let's begin today's bedtime story. Akun is a real tough guy. He chooses extreme cold for wilderness survival. He trudges through snow up to his waist, all to reach the snowy mountaintop and build a shelter for snow camping. Heavy, goose feather snow is falling. Akun has arrived at his destination. He puts down his camping gear. He grabs a shovel and starts building the shelter. Building a shelter in the snow is extremely difficult. Not only do you have to endure the freezing weather, you also need to wear thick cold weather gear. But Akun seems to like it this way. He swings the shovel powerfully, clearing a square foundation. Akun doesn't mess around when building a shelter. He doesn't skimp on any of the materials he needs. The dense grove nearby saves him a lot of time. He saws down the dead saplings with a saw, then chops off the branches with an axe, and gathers piles of straight sticks. Akun carries them back to camp and stacks them for later. Not far away, a fallen tree lies on the hillside. Akun makes his way to the fallen tree, and uses a saw to cut off the huge crown. After some hard-to-copy, dangerous maneuvering, the crown suddenly drops to the ground. Akun chops off the branches, then saws the trunk into equal lengths, and carries them back to camp one by one. Akun starts making a wooden bed on the dug foundation. 2 thick wooden posts are placed on the ground. Straight thin sticks are neatly laid across the posts. The 50-centimeter high posts keep him away from the cold snow. Lying on it won't feel as cold. Akun hammers wooden pegs into the snow to secure the laid-out sticks and keep them from slipping to the ground. With a spacious wooden bed, Akun starts building the shelter frame along the bed. First he binds 2 triangular frames with sticks, placing them on either side of the bed. A crossbeam connects the triangular frames, making it a sturdy, stable structure. Akun uses a saw to remove the extra parts of the frame. A strong gust blows the snow off the trees, catching Akun a bit off guard. Luckily, nothing uncontrollable or dangerous happens. Akun keeps building the shelter frame. He lays sticks along the crossbeam. The sticks, placed one after another, slowly make the frame sturdier. The branches chopped from the crown now come in handy. He carries them back beside the shelter, and covers the shelter frame with dead branches. As plenty of pine branches cover the entire frame, Akun's shelter is nearly finished. To make the shelter more windproof and snowproof, Akun shovels up snow and throws it against the shelter walls, letting the snow fill the gaps between the branches, leaving the biting wind nowhere to get through. Akun's shelter is finished, but because the wind is strong, the blown snow has already buried the wooden bed. In the icy wilderness, a campfire can keep him safe through the night, so Akun gathers a lot of dry firewood. He squats at the shelter entrance, and lights the firewood with a match. Winter nights always come early. Before long, it grows dark. The campfire blazes brightly and crackles away. Akun's snow camping life, along with the lit fire, is now secured. But to keep the fire burning, Akun has to come nearby in the dark, and gather plenty of sticks to keep it fueled. Akun carries back dry sticks again and again, and piles them beside the fire. This looks like enough to burn all night. Akun clears off the wooden bed buried in snow, and sits down on it to rest for a bit. Then he immediately went to chop up some pine branches. Spread over the wooden bed, it became much more comfortable. He took out a large cowhide blanket. After warming it by the fire for a while, the blanket became even warmer. Akun spread the warm blanket over the wooden bed. Lying down on it and taking a nap felt no different from being at home. Akun put the backpack back inside the shelter. He began piling up snow to build a windbreak wall, to make the shelter more windproof and better insulated. Akun crouched by the fire to warm himself. Snowflakes were still falling non-stop from the sky. Akun took off his cold weather jacket and dried it by the fire. Akun was really enjoying the snowy weather. He took out a steak. He was getting ready to cook himself a delicious meal. Akun grilled the steak over the charcoal fire. Meanwhile, he prepared some vegetables. After cutting it into chunks, put it into the pot. Flip the steak, which was cooked to rare, and keep grilling it. Meanwhile, Akun was preparing the side dishes in the pot. He placed the cut side dishes over the fire to heat them up. Of course, a flatbread was being heated along with it. The large steak had been grilled crisp on the outside and tender on the inside. He used a small knife to cut the steak into chunks. The side dishes in the pot should be ready to come out too. Akun was holding a steaming hot flatbread. He wolfed down the freshly cooked side dishes, and started eating heartily. Other people in the wild are always starving, but Akun was eating very well. As night fell, Akun put the remaining sticks on the fire. He filled his kettle with fluffy, marshmallow-like snow, and put it on the fire to melt and boil. The snowfall grew heavier and heavier. Akun also crawled into the warm cowhide blanket. In the warm glow of the fire, he fell into a peaceful sleep. Before long, it was the next morning. The all-night snowfall let Akun sleep soundly. The coals in the fire were still burning. After getting up, Akun brewed a cup of coffee, bringing this challenging snow camping trip to an end. When you're lying in bed unable to fall asleep, then tell me how long you had to scroll before you found me. This is a stress-relieving, sleep-aiding snowy campout. It's the ender of late-night insomnia. Watch this and you'll be off to dreamland. I bet your left foot is crossed over your right now. And your phone battery must still have some charge left. A new limited-time sticker pack is out. Share it and let's all look good. Same old rule. If you made it here, make a little squeak. Then let's dive into tonight's bedtime story. Winter in Freljord is long and bitterly cold. Mark, who loves snowy camping, travels through the deep mountains in search of a place good for aching joints, to build a shelter and camp in the snow, and improve his wilderness building skills along the way. When he reached the hillside, he stopped in his tracks. He could no longer hold back his builder's instincts, and started digging the shelter's foundation. The two dogs by his side. Little Black was already asleep, but Big Yellow wasn't. After Mark dug the foundation, he went to some dead trees nearby, and collected some dry branches. Big Yellow stayed nearby, but couldn't help much. Mark busied himself gathering building materials. Soon the campsite was piled with lots of straight sticks. Mark used an axe to carve a notch into one end of each stick. The sharp axe clanged against the sticks. The notches he cut were crisp and square. Mark processed 7 or 8 sticks like this in one go. The notches locked tightly together. Then he lashed them firmly with rope. He was building the shelter's frame. Once the triangular frames were finished, Mark added a center brace in the middle to strengthen the frame's load-bearing capacity. Mark stood one triangular frame upright, on ground that hadn't frozen hard yet. He dug several foundation holes to secure the upright frame. He filled the holes with broken stones and tamped them down, and the shelter frame stood rock solid. He did the same for the frame on the other side. Of course, Mark's big feet were no joke. He packed the backfilled dirt down hard. Once the frame was secured, Mark prepared 2 thick crossbeams and fitted them onto the frame, linking the 2 triangular frames into one sturdy hole. The shelter quickly took its initial shape. Mark kept building the shelter walls along the frame. The prepared sticks were laid along the frame. The A-frame design made the shelter feel very secure. Though Mark is already in his 30s, he's got unbelievable stamina. In the time it took to chat, both sides of the wall were neatly built. Mark still had some work to do on the shelter's base. He used a shovel to clear away the dead leaves on the ground, then used an axe to shape a few wooden pegs. One end of each peg was sharpened with the axe, and he hammered them into the ground one by one with the axe. He then cut a thicker stick, and laid it along the pegs driven into the ground. Soon, a V-shaped hearth was finished. He placed straight sticks across the crossbeams, giving the shelter a base. Mark built the front and back walls out of sticks too. There was nothing special about the fastening method, just rope wrapped and tied around them. After the 3 walls were built, Mark went to a large tree nearby, and scraped off some soft moss from the bark. He would use the moss to seal the gaps in the shelter walls, and of course, on the sticks below. It also made a soft mattress. Mark lay down in the spacious, comfortable shelter to rest for a bit. Then he got back to building the front wall. Mark was going to make a wooden door at the entrance. Wilderness building tools are important. Without even one of them, building feels much harder. But Mark had all the tools he needed. He busied himself at the entrance, using a knife to carve tenons into one end of the thin sticks, and drilling matching holes in the sticks, so he could assemble a square door frame. With a swinging hinge, of course. Mark lashed another layer of sticks onto the frame, make the whole door look solid and sturdy. Mist began to rise in the mountains. The beautiful scene looked like an inkwash painting. Da Huang came over and affectionately interacted with Mark. After a short break, Mark installed the finished wooden door at the entrance. The gaps on both sides of the door were handled just as simply. He also lashed the sticks to the frame with hemp rope. Mark has always been serious about building shelters. He is meticulous about every detail. At the top, he would make a small change. That is, to frame a ventilated window with thin sticks. After the shelter was finished, Mark began sealing the gaps in the shelter with moss. Da Huang and Xiaohe were lying nearby, fast asleep. Meanwhile, Mark was busy as could be. Soon the whole hut was tightly sealed with soft moss. The shelter also blended into its surroundings. Mark brought the camping gear he had carried back inside. He closed the sturdy wooden door. He walked down the slope with the water jug, and filled it with clean river water. Mark was about to make a stove for boiling water and cooking. He used a wooden stick, and rolled it in the snow and snow and snow. The stick was soon wrapped in a thick layer of snow. Mark packed the snowball firmly with his hands, then carried it back to camp. He pulled the stick out of the snowball and hollowed out a hole in the bottom. With thin sticks propping up the top, Mark put dry firewood inside. Then he lit the firewood. He put the kettle on top to boil. While waiting for the water to boil, Mark cut up an apple. He put it in the kettle to steep. Mark poured himself a cup of fruit tea. He sat in the scenic snow and started drinking. He took out the fresh ingredients he brought. He added a piece of butter to the pan to heat it. Mark started cutting the ingredients into pieces. He added them to the hot oil and stir-fried them over high heat. Big Yellow seemed hungry too. Mark cut the ingredients into pieces one by one, then added them to the pot one by one. The campsite was already filling with the smell of food, but Mark's stew was still getting more and more ingredients. The snow-made stove really held up well. Such high heat didn't even melt it. What exactly is going on here is really unclear. Before he knew it, night had fallen. Mark's stew was done. He served a portion for each of the two dogs. They started eating heartily. After eating and drinking their fill, Mark broke open the stove with an iron shovel. He shoveled out the charcoal inside and placed it on the fireplace at the bottom of the cabin shelter. That kept the cabin warm through the night. Late at night, Mark and the dogs returned inside. They lay down in the spacious shelter and drifted off peacefully to sleep. Before long, morning came. Snow had started falling outside. Mark got up early. Big Yellow and Little Black were still sleeping in. Mark pushed open the wooden door and looked outside. The ground was already covered in snow, clean and white. Mark went out into the snow and called the two dogs outside. He washed his face with clean snow. The charcoal fire at the bottom of the shelter was still burning. Mark boiled a kettle of water. He mixed it with milk and brewed a cup of coffee. He sat in the falling snow, eating breakfast while admiring the beautiful snowy scenery. Good times are always short-lived. Mark packed his bags and took the dogs, set off on a new snow camping trip. When you lie in bed unable to sleep, then tell me how long you scrolled before you found me. This is a soothing wilderness built for relaxation and sleep. It's the ender of late-night insomnia. Watching it will guarantee you drift off sweetly. I bet your left foot is definitely crossed over your right, and your phone battery must end in a 7. As usual, if this found you, make a little squeak. Then let's enter today's bedtime story together. Fanner, true to form, took the road less traveled. He came to the deep mountains on a rainy afternoon. There was an unfinished shelter here. He came this time to finish building it. Out here, it's wilderness survival. After arriving at the shelter, Fanner got busy right away. He put down the camping gear he had carried in, took out a shovel and first scooped out the ash from the fireplace, and dumped it down the slope. A cold, damp campsite. The fireplace had to be lit right away. Fanner gathered some firewood that wasn't too wet, and shaved off some wood shavings with a knife in the fireplace. He quickly lit the fireplace. Dead trees were everywhere nearby. Since they couldn't grow strong anyway, they might as well help the fireplace out. Fanner took the dead branches he had gathered, and sawed them into logs of the same length, then packed them into the fireplace so it burned hot and bright. With the fireplace warming the shelter, Fanner could now relax and start gathering building materials. To finish the shelter construction, he used an axe to chop down the dead trees, and turn them into straight logs. Then he carried them back to the campsite, and laid them thickly over the shelter's roof. Although the roof already had sturdy beams, adding another layer of logs greatly improved the roof's load-bearing capacity. Fanner patiently took each log, and fixed it to the beams with heavy-duty nails. Soon the shelter began to feel like home. Inside, the fireplace blazed brightly. Outside, Fanner was busy running around. He took out a waterproof tarp, and wrapped the entire roof with it. The edges were also fastened to the beams with heavy-duty nails, to keep a strong wind from ripping it apart. After the tarp was secured, Fanner started hauling sand up onto the roof, bag after bag, burying the roof in sand, which helped block the wind and hold in the heat, and firmly buried the tarp underneath. Even if it rained even harder, no rainwater would seep inside. Fanner stomped the corners and edges down tight, afraid there might be gaps left behind. The sky began to pour. Fanner went back inside to warm up by the fire and wait out the rain. After the rain stopped and the sun came out, he kept swinging the shovel in his hand, shoveling sand onto the roof, covering the tarp in a thick layer. Fanner went up onto the roof and packed the sand down with his shovel. With that, all the outdoor construction was finished. He gathered a sturdy stick from nearby, and brought it inside to use for making an earthen Kong bed. He laid the stick along one wall of the shelter, and filled the gap beneath it with stakes to hold it in place. Fanner filled a bag with some sand, and packed it in along the marked position of the stick. The Kong bed quickly took shape. The charcoal fire in the fireplace was burning strong. Fan boiled a pot of water over the coals. He carried back a large pile of straight sticks and stacked them by the entrance for later use. The water in the kettle soon boiled. Fan brewed himself a cup of hot tea. He sat on the hillside, resting and rehydrating. After his strength returned, he kept working. The saw in his hand was very sharp, and he cut the gathered sticks into equal lengths, tossing them in piles into the shelter, and stacking them neatly at the entrance, to make plenty of fuel for the fireplace. Only by keeping the fireplace burning could the indoor temperature and humidity stay comfortable. Fan kept gathering sticks, smoothing them and stripping off the bark. After Fan filled the fireplace with dry firewood, he began making a wooden door from the sticks he had collected. The shelter walls were all built from stacked stones. It needed a sturdy wooden door. To improve the shelter's security, Fan measured the entrance and joined sticks together to make a square door frame. He secured sticks onto the frame. Soon, the wooden door was finished. Fan measured the entrance and used a saw to cut off the excess, making the door even more square. He took out a tarp and wrapped the square door tightly to keep the biting cold wind from blowing inside. After the wooden door was finished, Fan fitted the door snugly into the entrance. The smooth opening and closing showed off his superb craftsmanship. Fog began to roll into the mountains. Fan returned to the warm shelter. He laid a moisture-proof mat on the heated Kong bed. He spread the coals evenly in the fireplace and put a kettle on top to boil water. Fan began cooking dinner in the fireplace. A pot of hearty stew looked mouthwatering. It was ready in no time. He poured himself a cup of hot tea. Sitting in the warm, spacious cabin, he ate heartily. The firelight from the fireplace made the cabin warm and cozy. Fan showed off his shelter to the camera. As night fell, he turned off the electric light hanging from the roof and fell asleep peacefully by the warm glow of the fireplace. When you're lying in bed unable to sleep, then tell me how long you scrolled before finding me. This is a relaxing, sleep-aiding snow camping trip. It's the end of late-night insomnia. Watch it, and you'll drift off to dreamland. I bet your left foot is crossed over your right now, and your phone battery definitely has a 7 in it. Same old rule. If you made it here, give me a squeak. Now let's enter tonight's bedtime story together. The man's name is Khan. He's a wilderness building vlogger. This time, he's on a hillside. He's here to build a shelter for snow camping and wilderness survival, and to improve his wilderness building skills. Khan already had the shelter planned out. He had already started digging the foundation. His powerful arms swung the sharp shovel. Soon he dug out a square foundation in the hillside. This was largely thanks to the loose soil, which made digging easy. Khan had already left space for the hearth. He lit a fire at the campsite. After having a quick bite to eat, he kept digging the foundation. From the size of the foundation, it's easy to tell. The finished shelter won't be small. Khan kept digging inside the site. He needed to dig a square trench for building the shelter walls. Once everything was ready, Khan carried an iron bucket over and started gathering stones. He needed lots of stones to build the walls. In no time at all, piles of stones were stacked at the campsite. Khan began building the walls. He chose high-quality yellow soil and mixed it with clear stream water. Once mixed, it became thick, sticky mud. Khan stacked mud and stones layer by layer. The reserved hearth was also built up with stones. The square trench he dug was filled with large stones, making the foundation even stronger and sturdier. After the square trench was filled with stones, he backfilled and tamped it down with sand. With such a solid foundation, the shelter he built would be standing long after 3 generations had come and gone. Khan started collecting sticks to use as posts for the shelter walls. He stripped the bark from the thick sticks he collected. The straight logs were charred over the fire and buried in the project foundation holes. Charred posts resist rot and insects, greatly extending their lifespan. Khan kept collecting clay with the iron bucket. Then he fetched a bucket of water from the stream, which let him mix up lots of mud. Khan spread mud around the hearth, then set down a large flat stone. With his skillful masonry, the hearth soon reached nearly 50 centimeters. The grand hearth looked extremely sturdy. Khan lit a roaring fire in the hearth. As the flames blazed in the hearth, the campsite stayed warm. A light drizzle began to fall from the sky. Khan had to stop working and stretch a tarp over the foundation. Khan gathered stones by the riverbed, because building the walls required a lot of stone. With the tarp in place, he could keep building the shelter. Don't let Khan's scruffy beard and rough exterior fool you. His wall building skills are truly top-notch. The uneven stones were neatly stacked into place by him. Soon the shelter's 4 walls reached a meter high. Khan sealed the gaps between the stones with mud, making the walls look neater. Once the walls reached the planned height, Khan started laying the floor inside. Stones of all sizes were spread across the floor. The little cabin instantly looked much cleaner and tidier. Filling the gaps with sand and gravel made it look even grander. After Khan finished building the chimney, he lit the hearth. The campsite was filled with warm, smoky atmosphere. Khan kept gathering building materials. One by one, the useless little saplings were cut down. Since they couldn't bloom into flowers, they might as well be used to build a shelter. Khan used a scraper to strip the bark from the log, making it smoother and more attractive. He marked the spots on the log for the notches to be cut, then worked them with an axe. The beam fit snugly into the posts, and was secured with nails. The shelter's roof frame soon took shape. He laid the sticks along the beams and secured them, arranging them in a slanted slope against the shelter's back wall. He kept adding rafters to the roof structure, making it even sturdier. The nails clinked and clanged under his hammer. The shelter's wooden frame was soon propped up with logs. Khan was good at masonry, and his carpentry was no worse. After all his hard work, the shelter already felt like home. The neat logs blended with the stone-built walls. Khan climbed onto the roof to test its strength. With nearly 200 pounds of weight on it, the upper frame didn't move at all. Khan took out a black tarp and wrapped the entire roof tightly. With the tarp in place, even in a torrential downpour, there would be no leaks inside. Khan secured the tarp along every edge and corner of the roof, making it look more neat and tidy. After the main structure was finished, Khan began making the wooden door. He drilled holes at the reserved entrance, combined with a tenon wooden stick. Then he assembled a square door frame. Finally, he secured it to the top of the frame with wooden sticks. A sturdy wooden door took shape amid the sound of hammering. Khan installed the wooden door into the drilled openings. The wooden door now opens and closes smoothly. The tarp on the roof was backfilled and buried with sand, to keep strong winds from tearing it apart. As more and more sand buried the roof, the shelter blended seamlessly into its surroundings. Khan gathered some fresh moss, and decorated the shelter's roof with it. The soft moss not only improved insulation, but also kept rain from washing the sand away. Then he decorated it with dried leaves. No one passing by would ever notice. A heavy snowfall covered the ground in a thick blanket of snow. Khan came here again. He worked on some logs. Inside, he made a spacious wooden bed out of sticks. The bed was exactly 30 centimeters off the ground, so it wouldn't be affected by the cold seeping up from the ground. Khan lay down on the spacious bed and rested for a while. Then he added clear plastic film to the window, keeping the biting wind outside. The coals in the fireplace were burning hot. Khan spread a moisture-proof mat on the bed. He sat inside the warm shelter and roasted potatoes over the coals. He carried a thick wooden stump back inside. It made a tiny dining table. The water in the kettle had already boiled. Khan brewed a cup of hot tea. The roasted potatoes were almost ready too. He skewered a sausage and warmed it by the fireplace and sandwiched it between bread split in half. He added cheese to the soft potatoes and sprinkled on some seasoning to boost the flavor and cut the gaminess. Khan poured himself a cup of hot tea. Sitting in the spacious, bright, and cozy shelter, he ate heartily. Such a pleasant snow camping life. He really knew how to do it. Khan closed the shelter's wooden door, bringing this long wilderness building journey to an end. When you lie in bed unable to sleep, then tell me how long you had to scroll to find me. This is a relaxing, sleep-aiding wilderness build. It ends late-night insomnia. Watch this, and you'll drift off happily. I bet your left foot is resting on your right now, and your phone battery has to end in 7. A new limited-time meme pack is out. Share it so we can all enjoy it. Same old rule. If you found it, give a little squeak. Now let's dive into tonight's bedtime story. The man's name is Blue. He's a wilderness building blogger. He has several shelters deep in the jungle. His reason for coming to the river this time was to build another shelter and try a different kind of survival in the wild. By his side was his dog, Dahuang. 1000 boulder was Blue's destination. He planned to use the gap beneath the boulder to build a shelter and settle in. The boulder formed a 45-degree angle with the ground. To build a shelter, you just need a solid foundation and a few walls. Blue didn't hesitate for a second. He was already at work. The shelter's foundation was laid with stones. There were lots of small stones under the boulder, so gathering them was quick and easy. Soon, Blue had leveled a square foundation. It wasn't small either, big enough for one man and one dog. Blue came to the small river. He mixed fine yellow soil with river water and made some sticky mud. He took it back under the boulder for the wall work. Glue smeared mud into the gaps between the stones. Though the dog couldn't help much, it was full of energy. Glue picked up the stones nearby and piled them under the boulder. He began planning the wall structure, building with stones along the boulder. Layer by layer, mud then stone, he built upward. Glue had plenty of wilderness building experience. You could tell just by his technique. The old guy really knew his stuff. Stones of all different shapes, under his skillful hands, were stacked to fit together perfectly, as even as a wall of red bricks. Glue's stamina was top-notch too. Even with such heavy labor, he still didn't take a break. He focused entirely on building the walls. Soon, the shelter had taken shape. One half of the wall was sharp and angular. The other half was half-arched. Under the cold sky and white clouds, the river rushed along. The dog wandered around the riverbank. When the walls were almost done, Glue took the dog nearby to gather some riverside wood for the shelter's other structures. He picked a small dead tree. Since it couldn't bloom, he might as well use it for the shelter. Glue tossed the dead tree to the riverbed and used a saw to remove the dead branches, leaving the straight trunk. He carried 2 prepared logs and headed back to the shelter. The dog stayed by his side, following him everywhere. Using the logs he gathered, he prepared to make a doorframe at the entrance. He stood the logs upright beneath the stones. The river roared on. Soon, Glue's doorframe was square and neat. With the frame in place, Glue mixed more mud and kept building the walls upward, piling mud onto them. 2 rotten wooden posts, Glue planned to use for the shelter's windows. Placed on both sides of the wall, they really looked the part. The windows solved the lighting problem inside. Glue kept building the walls upward. The neat walls soon reached 1 person high. Glue built the wall right into the boulder. From afar, the shelter was already taking shape, with a certain charm. Before long, the 2 walls blended into the boulder. Glue kept gathering nearby wood. He planned to make a wooden door for the shelter. At the same time, he collected some pebbles. Piled together, they could form a chimney for the hearth. Glue really was a master at wilderness building. The hearth's chimney was soon built, and it matched the shelter's style. He began processing the sticks he had collected. He sawed them into equal lengths. Then he neatly arranged them on the kong inside. Once a large number of sticks had been laid out, a spacious kong was ready to sleep on. Glue gathered some dry firewood. He was getting ready to light a campfire. The fire-starting tool was also unusual. He scraped some fuzz off his sweater to help get the campfire going. Once the campfire blazed to life, Glue opened a can and poured it for the dog. The dog ate with great relish. Soon it was all gone. He skewered a string of mushrooms by the campfire and roasted them over the coals. After a simple bite to eat, Glue began making wooden planks for the floor inside. He cut the prepared sticks in half and laid them neatly on the floor, keeping the sand and dirt from the ground out and making the shelter much cleaner and tidier. Glue sawed a tenon into 1 stick for making the door. Of course, 2 matching holes had to be cut into the doorframe as well. Glue sawed the collected sticks into equal lengths and placed them on the wooden doorframe. Once the thick wooden door panel was assembled, Glue used nails to secure the wooden sticks one by one. The wooden door was neatly finished. Glue installed it in the doorframe. The gaps in the door were sealed with yellow clay. With that, the shelter was finished. Glue replenished his water supply. The little river was gurgling along, but the water quality seemed a bit lacking. Glue had to use the burned wood charcoal to make a simple filter. After filtering, the murky river water became much clearer. After drinking it all down, he kept installing clear windows in the shelter. Once the 2 plastic windows were secured, Glue lit a roaring fire of dry wood in the fireplace. Inside the cold, damp stone hut, the fireplace was needed to improve the temperature and humidity. The high-draft chimney was puffing out blue smoke. Flames were shooting out through the chimney too. Clearly, Glue had built the fireplace very successfully. After a busy day, Glue finally could sit down and rest for a moment and make himself a delicious meal. To fill his stomach, he fried some mushrooms in hot oil in the pot. The mushrooms turned golden and crisp, paired with a can of soybeans. He finally cracked in 3 eggs. The meal was soon ready. Glue sat in the newly built shelter, sharing the meal with the dog. He sandwiched the fried egg between slices of bread and ate it with gusto. The sun outside had already set. The charcoal in the fireplace was burning strongly. Glue called the dog back inside. He lay down in the spacious, comfortable shelter and curled up together with the dog, then drifted off into a peaceful sleep. It's spreading across the internet now. Phone battery at Goldie. You'll definitely come across relaxing, sleep-aiding snow camping. This is just plain fooling kids, isn't it? I actually feel like, the moment your phone battery hits 4%, open black lens bracket, you're guaranteed to scroll past me. Alright, let's not talk too much. Let's step into today's bedtime story together. Xiao Shuai arrived at his wooden cabin shelter. The cabin had been unoccupied all winter. The temperature was frighteningly low, so he filled the fireplace with dry firewood. He lit a blazing fire with dry firewood in the fireplace. Thick snow had covered the shelter, making it look spotless white. The fireplace flames had already made the cabin a little warmer. Xiao Shuai picked up the iron bucket beside him. The water inside had already frozen solid into an ice block, so he placed the iron bucket on the fireplace to heat it up and melt the ice. Xiao Shuai sat by the dining table and poured himself a cup of hot tea. He rested while also replenishing some of the source of life. There was plenty of dry firewood prepared on the side, ensuring the fireplace could keep burning continuously. Xiao Shuai filled the fireplace with dry firewood, keeping the room at a comfortable temperature at all times. He was already so hot that he had taken off his thick coat. You can imagine how important the fireplace was. Xiao Shuai inspected the buckets placed inside the room. They were all frozen stiff. As for the construction tools on the wall, it was so bright it practically blinded my titanium alloy eyes. There were all kinds of everything imaginable. He placed a light bulb on the roof for illumination, to make the room as bright as possible. Xiao Shuai moved the kerosene lamp by the window aside. He was preparing to refine the dining table into something even more delicate. Xiao Shuai rubbed sandpaper across the tabletop, making the rough tabletop smooth and even, and the squeaking scrape of the sanding also sounded very pleasant. The entire tabletop was soon sanded smooth and shiny like a mirror. After Xiao Shuai swept away the wood shavings, then he opened another can of varnish. He poured it into a food container. Apply it along the window frame with a brush, while also improving the window frame's appearance. It can also prevent the window frame from rotting or getting infested with insects. The freshly sanded tabletop was also coated with varnish, to enhance the dining table's appearance. The powerful fireplace quickly burned through the firewood. Xiao Shuai promptly filled it up. He went outside. He picked up the metal bucket on the sled. He filled a bucket with clean snow out in the snow. He carried a full bucket of snow back into the cabin. He put it on the fireplace to melt and boil it for later use. Although he couldn't find any water source in the icy snow, but the thick snow all around left him with nothing to worry about. The firewood Xiao Shuai had stocked outside was enough for him to use. He dug the dry firewood out of the snow, loaded a full cart, pulled it back inside, neatly stacked on the woodpile beside the fireplace. The cabin shelter was as safe as it gets in the snow. Xiao Shuai was inside the cabin getting ready to fill the water tank. He first unscrewed the faucet. He squeezed on some waterproof sealant. He reinstalled the faucet on the water tank. Then there would be no need to worry about leaks at the seams. Xiao Shuai mounted the water storage tank on the wall. Domestic water use became much more convenient. Xiao Shuai came out to the snowy ground outside. He loaded up another cart full of firewood. Looks like this imposing fireplace isn't just impressive in appearance. Heat burns especially well. The indoor temperature with the fireplaces. With its boost, it had already reached 25 degrees. Xiao Shuai had to take off his thick clothes as soon as he went back inside. Although the temperature had already risen, but the humidity made Xiao Shuai feel slightly uncomfortable. He kept washing his face with the water in the bucket. He took the tabletop and window frame, now completely dry. He brushed on another coat with the remaining varnish, making the tabletop look even more polished and bright. The little cabin also looked much more attractive and spacious. Xiao Shuai put the clutter from the bed into a box. He put it under the wooden bed. He neatly placed the gloves on the table. With careful arrangement, the tabletop also became neat and tidy. Xiao Shuai took out a gas stove. After being busy all day, he finally had time to cook a delicious meal to treat his growling, hungry stomach. The snow in the bucket has already melted. Xiao Shuai used a clean cloth to strain impurities from the melted snow, and then poured it into the wall-mounted water tank. The faucet showed no sign of leaking. Xiao Shuai was very pleased with his handiwork. He washed his face with water at a comfortable temperature to moisturize his dry skin. Xiao Shuai also lit the two lamps on the table. The dim light made the cabin feel especially cozy. Xiao Shuai began preparing to cook. Xiao Shuai was constantly busy in the cozy cabin. He peeled the potatoes with a knife, then washed them and placed them on the cutting board, and cut the washed potatoes into chunks. He heated the oil in the wok, and added the potato chunks to the wok to stir-fry over high heat. Soon the cabin was filled with the smell of food. Xiao Shuai also chopped some minced meat. He shaped it into balls with both hands and set them aside for later. The stir-fried potatoes were poured on a plate. The minced meat was also fried in the wok. The sizzling sound alone was mouthwatering. Soon, a delicious meat and vegetable dish was ready. Xiao Shuai sat inside the cozy shelter and began eating heartily. It was easy to tell from his satisfied expression that he was very satisfied with this meal. After finishing his meal, Xiao Shuai washed the pots, bowls, and utensils clean. Xiao Shuai is also a neat person. He had tidied the cabin shelter up neatly. It was just like being at home. It was getting late. Xiao Shuai inflated an air pillow on the wooden bed. He spread out the down sleeping bag, climbed into the warm sleeping bag, fell asleep peacefully.